everyone. Should you get a new phone before the tariffs? But wait, the tariffs aren't on. But yes, they're coming back. Who the hell knows? You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hi, everyone. It's Alan Schimmel. Happy Tuesday and welcome to Techstrong Gang. We've got a great show lined up for you today and some great folks to talk about it with. Let me introduce you to our Tuesday panel. First of all, he doesn't look nautical today. It looks like he's a landlubber. Oh, he's in Canada. Okay, there he goes. He's back home, or one of his homes in Canada. He's our resident cyber expert, Chris Blask. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
I'm good. Good to see you, Alan. Yeah. We're snowbirds. I turned 60 last week, and we've been playing this as one does all our life. My wife's Canadian, I'm American. So yeah, it's spring, so it's time to be in Canada instead of the surface of the sun where you are.
Yes. Well,
here we are.
Truthfully, I just got back here last Thursday, right? I was in I was in the Alps and then Lake Como, so it wasn't that hot there. But I'm digging your Blue Jays shirt there, Chris. Good for you, man. We'll go from Canada. I don't know how warm it is in Colorado, but our next two folks are in Colorado. Has spring sprung there yet, or is it still snowing, guys?
Classic spring for Colorado. Yesterday and Saturday we were in the beautiful 80s degrees. The blossoms are all out, and last night it snowed.
Yep. That's how it goes.
Colorado.
I woke up this morning to a dusting.
Yeah, but it could be back to 70s by noon. So.
Oh yeah, easily. Yeah,
that's Colorado.
40 degrees, no problem.
What used to freak me out though was all the software engineers used to come to the office in shorts when there was a dusting out there, and I'd be like, "What are you doing wearing shorts?" They're like, "Oh, it'll warm up. It'll warm up."
Oh, the two rules in Colorado is you must own at least one dog and you must go around in shorts all 12 months of the year.
All right, there you go. Anyway, from Colorado, from Futurum Data. Oh, she's an expert in a lot of things. That's why we love having her here. Camberly Bates. Hey, Camberly, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Including, I might add, the New York Yankees. It's a weird connection. Yes. We could talk about it another time.
Not an expert in the Yankees, but all I'm hearing about, we need to have a session on, well, should there be a market, should be there a cap on salaries?
Well, no, but the Dodgers figure out a way they get these people to defer their salaries. That's what we need to have the cap on. Make salaries real. No financial shenanigans. Anyway, moving over in Colorado, he's Futurum, a DevOps analyst and original gang member, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitchell, how are you?
Hello from Colorado. We have the bookends, east and west, parts of the metro area.
From Denver, a lot of Coloradoans would take offense to that. I actually, I was in the Swiss Alps with this nice couple on their honeymoon. They were from the Springs. He's a fireman for Colorado Springs. I said, I love Colorado Springs. He said, yeah, you may not realize, but it's only a matter of time until we're bigger than Denver because we're growing much faster than them. I said, oh, that's great. Great. Good for you guys.
Have fun.
What, are you going to start with a guy on his honeymoon? But anyway.
I'm not sure that's a great thing to aspire to, but okay.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on from Colorado, we're back here in Florida. Our Echo Insights analyst and advisor, things green and sustainable and anything connected with it, Bonnie Schneider. Hi, Bonnie. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. Well, it's not just me. It's all of us. It's great to have you on.
Thanks.
All right. With that, guys, let's get right down to it. So, excuse my pain in the neck from the whiplash, but, but this is the chaos we live under. It's on, it's off, it's off, it's on, it's partially on, it's partially off, it's on for now, but it won't be later. Camberly, what's the latest going on with, and specifically we're talking tariffs now on phones, computers, electronics, I think.
So first of all, we're recording this on Monday, and I know we're going to broadcast it on Tuesday, and anything can happen in the next 24 hours. So we need to be time sensitive here. And in fact, Trump came out, or I'm not sure, I didn't see his actual quote, but I know they're saying that there's going to be more to be said in the next 24
No,
hours.
it's only a temporary reprieve.
Right. It's a temporary reprieve, but what Lutnick was saying on the news is basically they're looking at how they don't want to peanut butter how they're doing semiconductors. So it's going to be a cutout way of how they're going to do tariffs on semiconductors or computer systems. So it covers, I did look at the SEC codes, what they're talking about. So it's all data processing, it's telecommunication, telco kind of materials. It's all some of the semiconductors pieces of iPhones, et cetera. So it does cover the gamut of technology that we have. And I think what they're doing is they're saying, okay, so there is going to be a tariff, don't count it out. And that tariff, they're going to look and saying, how do they put the tariffs on there to motivate bringing back onshore? And that's, the entire kind of focus that they're looking at is bringing that supply chain or those supply capabilities onshore where we bring manufacturing here. And so sounds like it's more of a scalpel than a sledgehammer on it or whatever. But, that's kind of where it is right now, and more to be revealed in the next 24 and then the next 48 and the next 72 hours.
Yeah, it'll go back and forth because they make this up as they go. But here's my question.
A 5-pound hammer. I think we're just going a little bit smaller.
A ball peen hammer, as they call it. But so for the next 3 to 5 years until we could build that up in-house, should we use tin cans and strings? Or should just everything grind to a halt and we'll blame it on Biden or something?
I don't think that's what they're trying to do here. I think they're saying, yes, we can't. There's a couple different things on the electronics piece of it. Why haven't we really executed well on the semiconductor kind of whatever the name of that law was for that was
the CHIPS Act.
The CHIPS Act. Thank you very much. Yeah, the CHIPS Act. Well, there's all kinds of regulations around building, and unless we chop and do something about that, it's going to take you 3 to 5 years to build something. So they understand that. They're looking at, I'm assuming, looking at the regulations at the same time. They're looking at, how fast can we get here, making sure that, and they are people that understand CapEx investments and their long-term investments to be had in order to bring it on board. So they're not stupid in terms of what that means when you drop some money. So how do I give assurance to these guys that if I start building and working on a semiconductor or whatever manufacturing facility here, how do I know that in 2 years when and if the House of Representatives changes over, all this doesn't disappear, or in 4 years when we have and possibly a new, not possibly, we will have a new president in place, all those kind of things. So that they can't be that stupid. And I'm not as smart as some of these guys that are doing this, and I know this. So.
Cam, you've got my vote. Don't really? I'll tell you a lesson I learned in my career. Sold my first company to a roll-up, and there was some very smart people running that show. And they used to do their exec meetings. I wasn't part of the exec team then. And I used to sit in my office saying, you know what, they're going to come up with the right things to do. I can't wait to hear the new strategy, and I'm going to execute it and be a good soldier. Until I got finally promoted into the exec team. And I sat in those meetings and listened to those morons. And then I realized the emperor had no clothes. And, my fear is, as a matter of fact, I know this emperor is stark raving naked. And that the people advising him, though they may be smart businessmen and they know from CapEx, I'm not quite sure they get it, that they grab, or the old question is, when have any of them gone to an Apple store lately to buy something? When have they, you know what I mean? They're the problem is when you're so wealthy, like at that level, you're not in the everyman's shoes. And that's really what I worry about is what happens to my sister-in-law who's 72 years old and is contemplating, should I run out and replace my phone right now or wait and my phone she won't use an Apple, too expensive. But my Android's now going to be, twice the price.
Yeah. And I do appreciate and very much so respect what you're saying in that. Because there is, even in my own kind of keeping up with the education with the people that are either in Washington or outside of Washington or some like, and I won't name some of the podcasts that are out there that I've listened to that are, some really super smart economists. And I was talking to my husband on this and I say, what it feels like is that, and we've heard it, that, 20% of the people weren't really impacted. Well, didn't think they were impacted by the stock market because they don't have stock, right? They're not playing in the market. And I'm like, that's that's why there's all the screaming going on. Partially is because you have the extremely wealthy that have been impacted by what's going on, and that what they don't kind of hear is what's happening with that middle market. How they're
Right. I
feeling,
mean,
how
it's
they're-
Main Street versus Wall Street,
Right.
right? That's the old saying, Main Street versus Wall Street. I look, I'm all for shortening our supply chains and building an American capability. My point is, or my feeling is, you do that by out-competing, out-innovating, outperforming your competition, not by building walls. Right? Because when you build walls, either you got to keep those walls up forever, or it's just you're creating a unrealistic environment that sooner or later is going to crumble. Right? We've got to figure out a way, like you mentioned, making it easier to open foundries or chip factories or processing or what have you. Yeah, it all sounds good till they want to build it in your backyard, right? And then you get the tree huggers and these folks and, all of that. And we haven't even touched on another thing. In spite of what some may say, making an iPhone is not about getting hundreds of little people with tiny screwdrivers putting screws in the phone. There's a lot more to assembling these products. This ain't Henry Ford, and we're not making Model Ts. Chris, go ahead.
So I'm trying to think what to add to this, and I hate to go back to my standard trope, but this is how I end up with this whole inevitability curve sort of thing, right? So you are where you are, you always are, right? And I it is what it is. I actually liked that when that was a saying we were all saying, because this is where we are, right? And we are going to work for it from here, like it or not. Pick an analogy, you're on the water, storm happens, your thing broke, it is what it is. You're working from there. And all of us, everybody here on the screen, we literally travel around, we deal internationally, we think outside of our daily lives because that's what we do. And now I happen to be in my summer plumage. I'm here in Canada, and Canada is adjusting to this. The rest of the world will adjust to this, right? A friend here works at a metal shop. They're now doing quotes that last 24 hours, not 30 days or so, forget that, right? That's where we are right now. And that causes a lot of stresses that are going to, things will adjust. The U.S. right now has created a set of conditions around itself that are going to be persistent. Everyone else will adjust to it. Will Canadians actually be buying their Android phones through the U.S. at all, or bypassing that entirely? We'll work all that out. And frankly, I have not been impressed with the Canadian Liberal Party for a long time in his last iteration, but I'm liking what I see with Mark Carney now, right? We'll see what they do. But this sort of, as you said, Alan, Canada, as an example of what's going on, will have to decide how fast it can put an energy pipeline east to west and deal with, in a Canadian way, the environmental and indigenous and all the other issues with that. And as a interested pseudo outsider, I get the feeling they'll work it out okay. They'll get it done quickly. They won't spill oil all over the migrating geese, and they'll work it out. So,
Oh no, there's no doubt. I think they will. I mean, look, as I mentioned, I'm just back. I spent, I don't know, 2.5 weeks in London and Zurich and Milan. Spoke to a lot of people. Their attitude is, look, the U.S. is going to do what the U.S. wants to do. They're amazed why we would give up our position in the world, but nevertheless, they're not going to be held hostage to this whiplash of chaos. And they're going on with their plans in their lives, and that includes not dealing with, or relying on U.S. for as little as possible. But great, and good for my Canadian friends. But we got 330 million people here who, and probably, I don't know, 280 million of them have phones, or we rely on computers, and it's a scary thing. It's a scary thing.
Well, Alan, I think one of the things that I have to remind myself of with this administration is, if we're waiting for answers this afternoon or Thursday or whatever day on whatever tariff question, that's one answer. Hey, it's going to change anyway. It's going to change.
Everything's subject to change because it's fly by instinct.
But this isn't isn't a rogue wave. This is square waves that are all hitting at once, and it's going to be a continual like this. We're going to be in this roller coaster for, I think, a long time, because when you change a system, it's one thing to say we would like to move it all onshore. How do we do that? What are the incentives? What are the things that we try to direct the market to do to have that happen? Or where do we invest to help make that happen? We're not doing that. What we're doing is putting the brakes on everything. Say, stop. We're not going to do what we're doing right now. Well, what are we going to do? Well, we don't know yet. So that's the disruption. It's the not just hitting the brakes, it's the waiting for answers, right? So how many times did you sit outside that executive room waiting for answers, only to find out once you got in it, they were bozos anyway. You were stupid for waiting. What was I thinking, right? And we're in the same place here. It's the answers about chips and whatever, that's not going to solve anything. All it's going to do is let us sell some products for a while until they change their mind and somebody pisses off Trump or some other person.
Yeah, I was just going to.
Sorry, Bobby.
Oh, no,
go
I
ahead.
was just thinking about something that I think when it comes to the phones and the laptops, with the uncertainty, might encourage a little more sustainable behavior where people are going to say, well, maybe I can keep this longer, refurbish it. Maybe it's not worth it to spend the money. I'll be watching that to see if circularity levels go up just because of the uncertainty, and perhaps prices going up.
Could be.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were going to say that tariffs are like the weather. Wait a minute, and it'll change.
That's right. That's the weather in New England that we used to say that. Yeah.
It's the other thing though is, assume, in a Solomon-like way, they cut the baby in half here. And they do come up with some tariff schema for electronics. Well, that's going to really be a tax on businesses, right? Because Nick, think of a business that doesn't use a computer today. And what, right? I mean, as that works its way into a system, I shudder to think what, even a relatively modest tax on these electronics, I think will, and then the question is, how much of a tariff do you need to goad the right behavior that you're looking for, which is investment here in in the U.S. Now, project, what's it called? Not Starlight. What's the $500 billion
Stargate.
Stargate and all this money? I mean, what happened to all of those things? Why, again, why can't we just build better stuff here? Is the only way to do, you know, and I was never a Ronald Reagan fan. Let me say that right here publicly. I wasn't. I was a political science major, and I never bought into the whole Reagan economics.
Well, that explains a lot.
But that being said, the cornerstone of that, but I was from New York, where we had a pretty good Republican named Rockefeller who knew a thing or two about economics. Nothing about drug laws. Unfortunately, a lot of people rotted their lives away in jail. But the cornerstone of that was you need a level playing field. If there's a level playing field, let the chips fall where they may. No pun intended here. Let the chips fall where they may. And that's what I'd like to see is let the chips
let's
fall.
talk about what does a level playing field look like? I mean, I don't know. I'm not privy. I don't know international trade. But
Well,
what I do
China has real barriers.
yeah, exactly. And what I do, and so does India now. India's put up barriers too in a lot of different areas, some that impact the middle America and some that impact companies or whatever. But, if you wanted to do business, this is why NetApp, one of the clients that I've worked with a lot, has a deal with Lenovo. And they cut that deal with Lenovo to sell some of their products. Part of that deal is so they can sell over in China. And the same stuff we saw having what was Huawei did some similar kind of things in the past. I mean, we do all kinds of workarounds to make this
Well,
happen.
it's unnatural acts, Kim.
It's unnatural acts. So what you're looking at, maybe take this idea on, is that when you're negotiating a contract from the beginning, you don't want to walk in the door with half the contract already negotiated because you've lost some of your negotiation pulls. So what my perception of this is that they've taken the entire concept contract, if you will, which is trade, and threw everything on the table and said, you're going to come to the table and we're going to talk about everything all at one time. And then we're going to piece apart whatever pieces. That is one philosophy that is put forth about what is going on here. And by doing that, I bring whoever I'm negotiating with fully to the table. I'm negotiating the full contract. And if you've been through selling your company, easily what happens is that you agree upon something changes, and that's negative to you. It's kind of like the best thing to do is kind of start all over again, and don't let them parse and piecemeal you apart. And that's what I kind of think might be happening, although I don't know, and I am not an economist, and I am not sitting there in the Commerce Department.
Well, I do think that is what's happened, Camberly. I think is a good description of it. And you'd have to add to it, and we're going to put in penalties that make it very costly to do business until we figure this out. That's another incentive.
Well, until you lower barriers. But here's the thing. Thomas Friedman's Flat Earth kind of series of books, capital flows to it's like fluid, it flows to the lowest level. And so it may be that the US never is a chip powerhouse. We may design them here, but not manufacture them. Maybe it's just, but darn, we sell good soy. We sell a lot of soybeans, and we make the best weapons, buy our weapons, right? That's what the global economy is. You buy chocolate from Switzerland.
But you're trying to solve what I see is going on. They're trying to solve a multi-dimensional problem, not layered, multi-dimensional. One is trade deficit, if that is really a problem. Number two is the deficit of the country. Number three is the cutting of middle America in jobs. And number four is supply chains.
And you left out the big one, though, the thumb, Sergeant Hulka, the toe of this. Strategically, we want to dominate the world. We are America. And you know what? It's not just the US. Don't fool yourself. China wants to as well.
Well, we don't want to lose our power. I mean, I'm sorry. The entire right side of my screen is not talking.
I'm sorry.
I'll
Well,
give the
because
floor to
the
Chris. I'm going to give the
Canadians,
floor to
they don't
Chris.
play that power game. But make no mistake, the Chinese US wrestle for dominance is real.
But my point is, when you blow things up and then you put barriers for anything to happen until you have the new thing in place, the new contract in place, guess what? Nothing happens. People don't buy. People don't continue that contract that you signed with that supplier over in India. Nice contract you got there. Hope nobody does anything to it. Whoops, we just did. In effect, we blew it up. We blew up that. So it's the insanity of this. And I get it. Yes, if you want the ultimate leverage, I guess the problem is that the peasants suffer while you're
Well, let
thinking
them eat
about.
cake. Let them eat cake. Someone once said that, didn't they? Without losing their head?
They lost their head.
They did lose their head.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's, we want to connect business in the meantime, and that's the question. Is like, under what terms? are we
Well, and
connecting?
look, to be fair, you speak to India and some of these other countries, and they'll say, look, it's not all about, when we talk about trade, it's not all about goods. How much American services get sold into these economies? And how much of our economy is based on the export of American services? It is a thorny, complicated issue. And the problem is, thorny, complicated questions don't usually have simple answers.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, we're a society that yearns for simple answers. Anyway, we've gone over on this
Yeah.
block. Let's come back. We're going to talk about Microsoft Recall, the time machine. Again, they're doing this. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Hey everyone, in my best Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back. Well, it seems like Microsoft is back with plans for recall. For those of you who may not be familiar with Microsoft Recall, it's one of these great ideas, but the security and every other implication of it is a monster. Chris, what's going on here?
Well, I was thinking about in the last block, right? The continuation of that conversation is that, right? This is like the agent of AI, conversation we had a couple episodes ago, right? I want these things. What does it take to get that? And in this case, I want my technology to remember what the heck I was doing with it and to remind me and not make me waste my time searching for thee. And that implies all sorts of security and privacy things. Who is actually keeping track of that, right? And like the announcement about Amazon and Alexa, right? All processing is going to be in the cloud. Let's break this down from a security perspective. I never trusted this little thing anyways, right? So whether it's processing it here or out in the cloud makes no difference from a security and privacy perspective. I assume someone's listening right now and somebody I don't want listening, but I don't care, right? I factor that into all my risk profile, and it's just a thing. And so this announcement, drives us to have this conversation. As a security person, yes, we can have this, and we can have the security and privacy levels that we want if we enunciate them and if we buy, to those and so forth. Those technologies and capabilities exist to make this no worse than, the 9,000 other threats that like gnats in spring, float around us everywhere we go, right? That's not the big problem. The big problem is that we have not thought those things through. And our privacy and security and the information we share with the everything, social media platforms and big companies isn't secure. It isn't private. You should have no expectations that it is. Can we keep escalating down that path without at some point putting in the controls so that I can know to this topic, has anybody else been, authorized or unauthorized, been looking at my history of all the things that I've been doing that's being posted in Microsoft Recall, or not? And how this connects to tariffs and international trade and everything else is that it's all about efficiency, right? This is, as you were saying, there's a biology to this, to economics. It flows to, it follows the nutrient gradient. I believe very strongly that the way to address those sorts of privacy concerns is actually more efficient and more effective and takes less energy and costs less money for everyone involved to adopt from the consumer perspective, to build from the provider perspective, and provide more predictable, stable revenue streams function. You can build around that sort of thing. But we've accepted this level of uncertainty. It's getting to a point where, people actually think that you out there listeners, you really believe that the devices around you aren't listening. They are. And don't say you should worry about it. But, as such, they're not necessarily going to come down out of the black helicopters. But, current political environments, even in the U.S., make even those sort of James Bond's concerns kind of practical.
Well, I think we went right for dessert, since we talked about let them eat cake last segment. Total Recall, to refer back to another Schwarzenegger reference, Recall was kind of going for the dessert. I'd like AI to just tell me, look at everything that's going on in my digital environment, in my computer, and then be able to recall, go grab that stuff, go back and look, pull it up, search it, whatever it might be. And, and I think that's a laudable thing. I mean, how handy would that be? Very handy. I'd love to have that now. So we went right to that solution without really thinking about the security implications. And that's what caused the big hullabaloo appropriately. So, like, wait a minute. And the question is now, is it damaged enough that people are going to be, that's kind of a bad thing. I'm going to avoid going down that path, or it gets turned on. They don't know about it. So they're using it anyway. Because it wasn't suddenly that everybody got security and privacy conscious about AI. No, we still use a lot of AI and give away a lot of information that we shouldn't. So I'm curious to see. I don't know if the brand was damaged because I don't think it was distributed widely enough to really make a difference. Maybe in the corporate environment, certainly not in the consumer. But we'll see what happens.
So the question I have is, why did they recall again? What's the issue there that they decided they needed to do something, and what did they discover? If
Do you want to do it, Chris? You want to, go ahead.
I would love to think, that it really was a security and privacy thing, right? Because I agree, with Mitch, right? That I'm always looking for the driver. What will push the consumer opinion to the point that providers have to respond and do the kind of things that I, as a security engineer, would like to see done? And because I want this functionality. Do I trust the vendors? No. I mean, and I am one. So it's so I have to have compensating controls that, again, are expensive and cause me to do or not do things that if I didn't have to do that, I could just move forward and use things. So
if I remember right, Camberly, the recall takes a snapshot of your screen every.
It's like it's the Apple time machine.
Yes,
the
and it's
internet
storing
time
all
machine.
these images of what you're working on, what content you're working on, but it put it into a local database, and I believe it was a little like a SQLite database or something, but it wasn't encrypted or secured. So it was kind of like if somebody got access to that, they've got everything you've done and all the stuff on your computer too. So it was just sort of like, I think the security group was, they were at President's Club that week or something, when they went through there, are we ready to launch? Or somebody just said, I don't think we need to talk to security. Let's just get this thing out in the market.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and think, if I am a corporate lawyer, And would I even allow this thing to be turned on in my company?
Yeah.
And the
Maybe
reason,
your records retention policy.
talk
Bill.
about records retention now. We've now have created, I can't imagine the snapshotting of all the images and how much data that's going to create and how big that's going to get. Yes, we've got 122 terabyte drives now. Okay, thank you very much. But still, you are snapshotting images, and images are bigger than data, than zeros and ones kind of data. And, and the legality of it, I'm like going, whoa. Talk about discovery. Drop that into an AI model and do a little bit of discovery for a legal, liability kind of thing. Whew.
Makes for a great FBI investigation that never stops.
So let me take the other side of this coin, if I may. Isn't everything we do on computers logged and stored anyway, just about? Number one. Number two, look, as someone who always could use a little recall and reminders every now and then as I get older, it's a nice feature. But here's a fundamental thing I learned about security 30 years ago, and it's as true today as it was then. Security is not the barking dog or the mouth of the dog. Security is the tail of the dog, always has been, right? And if this feature is so good, so in demand, so useful, the attitude of the corporate overlords will be, we'll make it work. We'll find a way. We'll get some minimum security and privacy. We'll address those privacy concerns. Again, I've told this story before. I remember doing a podcast with the CEOs of MongoDB and Couchbase 15 years ago. This is when NoSQL databases were fairly new still, but very popular. And I asked them, I said, hey, a lot of people say NoSQL stands for no security. What are you guys going to do about security? I said, we'll build security in when our customers demand security. But right now they want NoSQL, easy, unstructured data and databases that work in that. And they were making, buku bucks, as they say back then. So it's the same thing. Chris?
It's, let me be clear. There is a point in the future where we will be able to do all these things. All these things, to this point, that we will all be able to sit here knowing that should we want to, we can check to see all of our history information, logging and everything else, everything about us and where it is and who's touched it and where it's been. We can't do that now. But and again, is these issues, and again, even the tariffing issues, it's all supply chain. If I can have visibility into my supply chain that I need for security perspective, just for software supply chain security, this whole software bill of material thing, then intrinsically, I also have that same capability to have the visibility into all these economic issues. Where are things actually coming from? Because it takes too long to figure that out now. But these capabilities have these technologies, specifically things that can be implemented, that could be legislated, that could be regulated. We have all the pieces to put these systems in place to achieve individual purposes that are getting closer to the present. In software supply chain security, we're looking at individual sectors that perhaps in the next couple of years, during this decade, may have the right drivers and economics to be able to implement the kind of utopian software supply chain security that we will have to have at some point to keep critical things running. So if we're a couple of years away from that, then those same sort of technologies can be bolted onto all these other things. The security and privacy of the data about me is a supply chain issue, right? The costs and tariffs and economic, how that's a supply chain issue. So we're approaching these different problems for the similar reasons and from different directions. So my real question is not if these things ever come to pass, Like, do they come to pass in my lifetime or in this decade or this year or next year?
You know, again, I think the louder the squealing, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So if recall is really such a in demand feature, is such a compelling product, and the privacy folks squeak loud enough, they'll grease it. They'll figure it out. And if they don't, they won't. It's an age. This is market at play. Is this product a killer product that we're going to tell the lawyers and the privacy people, shut up? Or here's some minimally viable, things we're doing to address your concerns, but this is going forward. That train's left the station. It's just the way of the world. And as a security person, you learn this. Chris, you've learned it. Mitchell, I know you've learned it. Right?
So you're saying we should create a new term, minimally secured product? Is that what we have?
Maybe.
Well, that's what we always have.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much the status quo. But
Which is fine, right? We worry too much. Right? Yeah, this is actually working right now. The internet is a patch job of, oh my God, we look under the hood, but it keeps working.
exactly.
Right?
And it's a minimally secure product. That's how I feel about it. But
It can be more secure. We would do less with it because we would have spent more time on
risk
that.
management, baby. All right. Hey, let's take
A minimal privacy product too, MPP.
MPP. I like that one.
MSP and MPP. There you go.
All right. Camberly Bates has that
You heard
IP.
it here.
First use. All right. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong Gang. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about AI sustainability and avatars. Oh my.
Yeah.
You're watching Techstrong Gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Welcome back to the Techstrong Gang. Well, recently I was at Emerge Americas and I spoke to so many people. I have one more left to share with you. This is Matthew Cervera, who is the CEO of Profits of AI. And when I first talked to him, I thought, okay, is he the prophet? No, he's not. He just represents a lot of them. So he's really seen the trends and the momentum of what people are talking about all over the country and globally, not just at this event in South Florida. And he mentioned agentic AI, avatars, and sustainability. So here's a look at that interview. Hi everyone, I'm here at Emerge Americas in Miami, and joining me now is Matthew Cervera, who is the CEO of Profits of AI. Matthew, it's great to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Obviously, AI is a big track at this conference. What do you think of it so far? What do you think of what you've seen? And tell me a little bit about yourself as well.
I've been nothing but inspired coming to, just like every year that I come to Emerge.
So how do you become the prophet of AI?
I'm not the prophet of AI. I represent the prophets. Yeah. These are individuals who have had vast experience within the artificial intelligence industry.
What do you do exactly with all these expertise in AI?
I facilitate conversations around the world with businesses, with companies, with conferences like Emerge on what this technology looks like for the future.
A sustainability standpoint, obviously that's a big part of the conversation with energy use. So
Yes.
Since you're in touch with all the thought leaders, tell me what you're hearing.
Quite a number of different initiatives going on right now and pioneered by some remarkable individuals. Artificial intelligence is being used to solve some of the long-standing problems in the sustainability space. The last couple years have been dominated by, of course, generative AI and that all the like wonderful things that have happened since then. I mean, we can think back to the original generative AI image of Will Smith eating spaghetti, right? And just over the course of a few short years, like the capability has just absolutely skyrocketed. So constantly people are wondering, what's next now? We've seen like such incredible advances. Like where can we possibly go from here? And from what I've seen, it's agentic AI that's going to definitely be dominating a lot of conversations around the world. So one of the most compelling use cases I have seen is when you start to combine agentic AI technology with virtual avatars, right? So these are entities in which you can interact with a virtual avatar of some sort of your own custom design or someone that inspires you or yourself even, and issue commands. And then this technology can go off and do a whole sorts of things. And it just makes that process so much more natural. Like we communicate our thoughts and everything much more clearly when we are talking to something that looks like us, and that kind of goes back and is connected to my role at Hanson Robotics, where I arrange appearances for the world's most famous humanoid robot, Sophia. So I'm constantly talking about that.
AI and robots.
Yeah, humanoid robots specifically.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
So when it comes to AI, a lot of people do have fear of it. Is it going to replace their job? Is it going to do things that are unethical? What is your answer to these kind of questions?
Oh yeah, sure. Will it replace jobs? Absolutely. It's already well underway. I mean, there are a number of different instances in which we can already see this happening, unfortunately. But there is a tremendous opportunity also that opens up for people to learn new skills, right? And to get much more acquainted with AI tools, right? Because on resumes in the future, the things that employers are going to look at is not necessarily your degrees and what schools you went to, but the number of AI tools in which you're familiar with, that because all of these companies are going to be having to draw on these in order to enable business function.
Since you're with the profits of AI, I'm wondering, what have you seen in terms of growth and demand? It must be surging right now.
There's so many things that artificial intelligence touches on that is critically important to engage in like really thoughtful conversation about how we conceptualize this technology, what it means for society, and that's what I've dedicated my life towards, is ensuring that people have a direct access route towards the most capable minds in the field to help answer these long-standing questions.
I'm sure there's going to be many more questions as things go on. Matthew Trevero, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Bonnie.
All right, well, we're going to talk more about AI and quantum computing coming up. Sustainability, of course, was top of mind when I was speaking with Matthew about energy use and AI, but he really went to a place with robotics and avatars, kind of a little preview of what people will be talking about in the future. But one thing I thought was interesting is the first trend that he mentioned was something that Alan had told me in an interview, agentic AI.
Right. Well, agentic AI is certainly the man of the moment, or the AI of the moment, rather. Getting bigger even than generative AI. But I'll tell you the truth, I get real excited about this physical AI. Is that the right term, guys, right? That's what we call the robotics and stuff. Mm-hmm. Physical AI. I can't wait to go buy a real robot.
Happens soon.
Yeah. But it is interesting, and again, we talked about whiplash with tariffs and public policy. Haven't we all been getting a little AI whiplash lately? Right? Agentic AI, it's going to rule the world. Well, agentic AI, it's taking your job. Well, maybe not. Where's the hype end and the reality bite here?
Well, I think we're definitely still in the hype cycle. What we're waiting for is, making it real, right? You're waiting for the physical AI robot. I just got back from Google Cloud Next. And just as an example of where we are, right? They delivered or made available an open source framework for agent development. It's called Agent Development Kit, like SDK, ADK. And the things in it are kind of understandable. It'd be like, how do you talk to multiple LLMs and how to do that through a systematic way instead of building it every time? How do you have multiple agents and how do they coordinate? How do you have subtasks within agents? Not anything that's earth shattering, but it's still kind of the basics, the core of developing this technology. So it's still early, and that's why we move from chatbots onto the next thing, but the next thing, it seems like it's only here partially, right? We can do some things with the technologies we get from whoever, Salesforce or Google or Microsoft, but there's more to come because we need the technology to be able to do it. So I think we're kind of building that plane still while we're flying it.
Yeah, I'll make a guess, right? Because I think this is safe enough. I think the rest of this decade, the next 5 years, we'll see this so clearly, right? Because we have a certain amount of AI robotic stuff. I mean, Roomba and so forth is out there. We've all seen one, maybe even had one and so forth. We certainly know somebody who's got one, and they're okay and they're fine. And they've actually been around quite a while. And it's kind of like the voice assistant, right? Alexa keeps surprising me that it's actually been around as long as it has. And it's gotten to the point where it's just awful. It's like the first version of a commercial skateboard or whatnot, right? By the time you actually start building with like bearings at all, or much less good bearings and so forth, the first stuff just seems really quaint, but it worked. And in the you look around the spaces, so Yarbo in landscaping, robotic mowing equipment, that's pretty established for a couple of years in already, right? Last summer we built some here, for fun, just playing around with Raspberry Pis. Anybody can do that. So the combination of the off the shelf backyard, you can start a company right now, order things off online and build your own robotic thing for market segment. That'll just keep happening. And in combination with again all the other things we're talking about, how our concerns, if we don't want them, with it's one thing to be vacuuming, it's another thing to have sharp blades and marching around our spaces. So it raises the same security and privacy concerns we have with everything else. So we can do it. The economic drivers, I think, are enough, and I think 5 years will change the way we look about robots in our daily lives.
One thing I want to mention, though, is it's in the blurb here, and you spoke about it, was emerging ethical concerns.
Mhm.
Do we still have emerging ethical concerns? Do we have ethical concerns at all, or have our ethics gone out the window in pursuit of profit? And that's with an F.
Ish, right? The fact that we keep talking about it, and again, I have my concerns. No sense beating those all to death. But right, I think what we quite often, and again, security guy talking with security people, come to something and say, before we start, we need all of these locks and gauges, and we never do, right? And eventually, we finally backpedal and reverse engineer them back into place to a, as we're saying earlier, an acceptable security level.
No,
So
but we
our
all remember that letter signed by 100 influential, smart people, including Elon Musk, very prominent, like a John Hancock signature on it. We got to slow down. We got to put the brakes on. The ethical concerns here, that went out the window. That went out the window.
I trust people. I know, not maybe a little bit naive here, but our ethical behavior we carry out in our daily lives. And not to turn this into a political show, right? I am concerned with individuals in
That
scale.
train's left the station too, Chris. It's okay.
Right. And less to do with legislation and technology and so forth, more to do with how we're moving that little notch. I don't think we move it dramatically, but a little bit's change when you take large populations and we're a little bit less ethical and spending a little bit less time thinking about it. It causes bigger problems.
Yes, there'll be ethical problems. And yes, we will reel them in. I mean, it's just the nature of every technology that we've developed has been used by a couple of fringe industries, if you will. And, whether or not, the sex trafficking one has always figured out how to exploit whatever technology you put out there. The drug industry has figured out how to exploit whatever technology. I mean, they're innovators. Just because he does not mean that you're not an innovator.
But being an innovator doesn't mean you have any ethics or you're a good person even. Anyway, Bonnie, thanks for a great report on that.
Sure.
Though it sounded, I mean, overall, I haven't had a chance really to talk to you about the show down in Miami.
Yeah.
It was an amazing.
It really was. I got a lot out of it, and I learned a lot and met a lot of fascinating people. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to share the conversations.
And all of your reports from there are on.
Techstrong TV and ecotechinsights.com.
There we go. All right. Hey, let's wrap it up. We'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday. Who knows what'll be happening by then. Camberly, great seeing you. Mitch, as always, fantastic. Chris, enjoy that spring weather up north in the great Northland. Remind you all, we have a full Techstrong TV schedule immediately following us today, so check that out. And until then, there's Alan Schimmel. We're out of here.